Good morning, Ma'am Susan. Good morning, classmates. Our topic is about educational accommodations and modification for learners with special education needs. I will going to discuss the accommodations and Ma'am Hirada will be discuss about the modification. Okay, what is accommodation all about? For learners with special education needs. But before that, let us know first the uh, eligibility accommodation. So, sino-sino ang mga eligible for that accommodation? Students are eligible for accommodations after they have been properly evaluated and determined eligible for services. The IEP team or team that determines our good students' needs and develop the plan required under Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act considers the current level of academic achievement and functional performance as well as the effect of the disability. Evidence must show that the student has been found eligible for services through one of these plans. IEP stands for Individualized Educational Plans. So, meron tayong classmate na ito yung report niya for our maintindihan pa natin lalo ang IEP. So, the IEP begins with evaluation for special education. It ends with um, written plan for services and supports. And meron itong mga steps or process uh, after natin ma-declare ang isang estudyante na meron siyang disabilities. Okay, there are many categories of disabilities. Yung mga special needs issues in children. So as you can see on that the picture, makikita mo talaga ang iba't ibang kakulangan or disability ng mga bata. So what are the categories of disabilities? So the first one is the specific learning disabilities. Okay? Intellectual disabilities, emotional behavioral disabilities, deaf or hard of hearing, yung mga mute people or hard to hear. Okay? Um, Visually impaired or yung mga low vision, may mga problema sa paningin. Okay? Orthopedic impairment, yung hirap maglakad or etc. Other health impairment, yung mga may mga health issues or health problems. Okay? Traumatic brain injury, speech impairment, language impairment, autism spectrum disorder, and others. So, as a teacher, we need to have accommodation in our classroom, assisting the students with disability. Okay, accommodation. Accommodation are changes that are made in how the student assesses information and demonstrate performance. Accommodations involve the use of different strategies, assistive technology, changes in the schedule or environment, or um, support from a person to increase, maintain, or improve the performance of the students with disability. Considering the accommodation inside the classroom, yung teacher ay gagawa ng mga pamamaraan para makasabay yung mga estudyanteng may kapansanan or disabilities to their regular classmate. para makaperform sila sa mga tasks and assignment na ibinibigay ng guro. So, considering na kailangan ng physical arrangement and instructional arrangement para sa kanila. Later on, madidiscuss natin ang accommodation in how to accommodate in specific disability in the students. So, accommodations, hindi mababawasan ang learning expectation ng klase, or accommodations do not reduce the learning expectation. Okay. There are many ways teachers can help students who are struggling in school because of their different types of disability or because of their disability. So, there are 4 types of accommodations na makatabang jud sa bata. Okay, so the first one is the presentation. How the students will access information. So, this accommodation changes the way information is presented. Okay, so, halimbawa is that listen to the audio recording instead of reading text. Work with a large print of size, or hear instructions spoken aloud. Yung mga ganun. So this is for the visually impaired students or having a difficulty in seeing. Okay, so the second one is the response accommodation. So, how the students will demonstrate competence. So, response accommodations changes the way the students complete assignment or a test. So, dito, gagamit tayo ng mga materials or mga devices na gagamitin nila to respond the task given to them. Okay, just like for example is dictate the answers to a scribe who writes or types, or use a spelling dictionary, magamit yung dictionary, or yung mga digital spell checker daw. Then, mag-use po og mga calculator or table of content or yung mga math na facts. Okay? So, daghan kayo mga pwede magamit to help them to respond sa ilahang mga tasks or assignments. So, the third one is the setting. So, how the students will be instructed and assessed. Okay? When you say setting is location. So, asa komportable ang isa ka bata, so dapat dito siya. Okay? So, the example for this is a seat where they learn best. So, for example, dool ba siya sa teacher? Diba? Or, another example is take a test in a small group setting. Kay naa mag-uban na mga disability, dili ginahan mag-answer sa in a large group. Na gusto nila na sila lang, gamay lang, para makafocus sila. Okay? Okay, the fourth one is the scheduling. when the student will be instructed and to be assessed. Okay. Example for this is giving them more time to complete a project. Okay. Another one is take a test in several time sessions or over several days. Uh, Another one is take sessions of a test in a different order and take a test at a specific time of a day. So, parehara po na siya sa timing accommodation that um, take more time to complete a task or a test. So, have a extra time to process spoken information and directions. So, and take frequent breaks, such as after completing the worksheet. So, those are the example for the. Okay, here we go. This slide show us the effect of disability and as well as the accommodation. So how to accommodate in different types of difficulty. So let's start in visual formats. So in visual formats, uh, unable to see standard print needs enlargement. So, it needs to have large print materials. Okay. Difficulty understanding language in printed text. So, it needs to have a sign language presentation to accompany text for beginning readers. Okay, this is for the deaf people or the mute people that needs a interpreter for for them to know the meaning of the word or the text. Okay, unable to hear and understand oral language. So ang nababagay doon is recording with closed captioning and descriptive video. Okay. In tactile formats, this is means sense of touch. So, um, in tactile formats, unable to see print uses tactile formats. So, the accommodation for this is the braille. Okay, this is useful uh, for the visual impairment people or visually impaired people. Refreshable braille display, name it braille code, tactile graphic image, or the real object. So, sa mga hindi makakakita or mga visually impaired, um, kailangan talaga nila ng braille. So, yun yung ginagamit nila to learn the lesson. Okay? In auditory formats, unable to see print uses auditory format. So, the accommodation for this is read aloud by person and recorded books. Unable to recognize or decode printed words uses auditory format. So, the accommodation for this is kailangan gamitan ng screen reader software, text-to-speech, and equipment with auditory output. In response accommodation, so dito natin makikita how the students will demonstrate competence. Because of their disability, mahihirapan sila to complete the task given to them. The first one, difficulty is the unable to use handwriting or keyboarding. So, kailangan ng gamitan ng scribe to record dictated responses word, processor, computer, and the word prediction software. Next is the speed of writing is too slow to keep pace with language expression. So, hinay siya. So, kailangan gamitan ng brailler and yung mga portable note-taking device. Next is the difficulty with expressive language. So, kailangan ng voice recorder, voice recognition software, speech-to-text, sign language, augmentation, and alternative communication such as communication board or other assistive device. So, in response support, in handwriting, lack of, kung ang bata is lack of coordination, weakness, new hand dominance, so, kailangan siya ng pencil, marker, or crayon or different diameter. In terms of written expression, if weak expressive language skills, kailangan ng thesaurus or dictionary. Next, expresses ideas orally but cannot convert into written language. So, kailangan ng word prediction software, task adaptation response in alternate ways. So, next is limited vocabulary, having a difficulties with syntax. In oral expression, having poor oral expression needs to increase wait time, difficulty articulating speech, use of visuals, difficulty finding words, task adaptation, alternate ways of giving, difficulty with syntax, oral presentation, and next is difficulty with pragmatics. Okay, setting accommodation. So, how the students will be instructed and assessed. In accessibility, the students having lacks of mobility, so the accommodation for this needs to have a physical access ramps or the non-slip surfaces, not slippery or kanang dili siya makaslide sa bata. Next is unable to open doors. So, guide rails, automatic doors or elevators for them. Has a motor impairment. So, what is this all about? So, having a motor impairment is the partial or total loss of function of the body. Kanang lupay-pay siguro. So, this may result in muscle weaknesses, poor stamina, lack of muscle control, or totally paralysis. So, this is called motor impairments. So, it needs to have a accessible workstation. Next is has sensory limitation. So, needs to have a specialized lighting, acoustical treatment, and preferential setting. Na bagay yun sa iyahan na dito yun siya mo lingkod. Okay. Next is the has needs that can only be met in a specialized setting. So, having alternate learning environment. So, in behavior management, uh, the difficulty of this is lack of self-control. So, kailangan ng may class rules and expectations, regular procedures, alternate activities, individual setting one-on-one, and having a small group setting. Next is unable to concentrate. So, need to reduce sources of distraction. So, layo siya sa mga noisy. Um, so, dapat na hilom lang and then with a small group lang. Next is difficulty maintaining attention. So, needs to have a preferential setting, noise buffer, individual setting, and small scheduling accommodations. The effect of disability in time allocation, uh, first is the work slowly, use of accommodation such as assistive technology that requires more time, medical condition affects effort. So the accommodation for this is need to extend time, need to have a breaks, uh, needs to have a schedule adjustment, preferred time for a day, on a preferred day of week. In time management, ano-ano ang mga napapaloob in time management? First is the short attention span. Difficulty staying on task until completion, easily distracted, and completes assignment quickly but inaccurately. So the accommodation for this is uh, needs to have a predictable routines and procedures. Assignments separate into parts and time limits for assignments. Okay, so the last one is the difficulty remembering what to do. So, the accommodation for this needs to have a visual schedule, checklist on individual responsibilities, assignment planner, and electronic device with alarms tools. Okay, the following are my references kung saan ko kinuha ang mga impormasyon and the contents of my topic for today. For the summarization of about my topics, the students may need a certain kind of accommodations for specific assignments of learning activities. So the teachers now are encouraged to provide such accommodation because the plain truth is that disability can pose a serious challenge to learning and to demonstrating knowledge and abilities fully. Accommodations can help students overcome or minimize the barriers presented by their disabilities. Accommodations provide the changes in instructions and assessment that may be necessary for them. And accommodation help students participate and make progress in the general curriculum. Okay, that's all of my report about accommodation. And Ma'am Hirada will be discuss about codification. I hope you learned something from my discussion. If you have questions and clarification, do not hesitate to ask me. I am Amerisal Danya po. Thank you po.